It is the start of a new anime season, and with that comes an endless array of new shows to choose from. I haven't had the chance to really look at what I want to pick up for the next few months, so feel free to leave a comment with some recommendations down below, but there is one show I've been waiting for, and that is the adaptation of Jojo Part 5 Golden Wind, or Vento Ario. David Productions' adaptation of the series is something I really love, but it's not something I ever thought I'd cover on this channel. The reason being, and this is something I've mentioned in the past, is that of course I'm primarily an animation channel, and Jojo is not a show that gets by on animation. It's not a show that's driven by movement. Of course, its source material is remarkably strong, but what drives Jojo is its direction. It's the phenomenal storyboarding, use of color, music, and fantastically detailed artwork. Yes, it has its moments of sakuga, but that has never been the series' driving force. This approach really culminated with Toshiyuki Kato's promotion to series director for the Part 4 adaptation. With his creative vision, Terumi Nishi's phenomenal designs, and a serious melting pot of competent directors, Part 4 was a real triumph and a step up over everything that preceded it. Intense color work led to an almost surreal atmosphere with wacky, character-centric framing emphasizing even the most mundane scenes. Its only real downfall was that at 39 straight episodes, the production really started to struggle, with some episodes requiring some intense redraws for the home release. I mention all of this because Part 5 marks a rather drastic change to the production, and before I even begin talking about it, I feel like this context is pretty important. Toshiyuki Kato, again the series director of Part 4, has stepped away from Jojo, instead working on David Pro's new Captain Tsubasa anime. Departing along with him are a pretty large number of key animators from the series, and on the art side of things, Terumi Nishi, whose designs were a shining part of the last adaptation, has left too. Replacing Kato as series director, we have Naokatsu Suda, a longtime member of the production, responsible for some of the series' most impressive episodes. If it was a finale or climactic moment, it was probably him. Alongside Suda are two others, the first being Hideya Takahashi, who's probably most recognized for leading the Keijo anime. I love Keijo. I think in spite of its absurd source material, its anime adaptation is legitimately excellent. It owns its balls to the wall madness in the best way possible, and I think that makes him just perfect for Jojo. Lastly, on the director front is Yasuhiro Kimura, whose expressive work on the second series of New Game turned heads and has already showcased his embodiment of Jojo perfectly in the promo video for this new series. Packed with colour and wild transitions, this is the type of work I want to see Part 5 drenched in to its core. Replacing Terumi Nishi as character designer is Takahiro Kishida, one of the industry's most iconic designers, best known for his work on shows like Baccano, Madoka Magica, and most recently, Welcome to the Ballroom. He's most clearly defined by his wild poses, loose line work, and emphasis on the way clothing hangs naturally off the body. Considering Jojo's use of all of these components, it sounds like a match made in heaven. And that brings me on to this first episode. What sounds perfect on paper doesn't necessarily translate to reality in quite the same way. Now, before hammering on that dislike button, give me a chance, let me be clear, I thought this first episode was great. It is 100% Jojo through and through, its identity is intact, and I think as a result, the overwhelming majority of fans are likely to be happy. Suda is a fantastic director, and I think the storyboard in this episode really speaks to his skill. I often talk about how one of my favourite components of a storyboard is how three-dimensionality can be conveyed through interesting angles and set arrangement, and that is all over this episode. Jotaro in his office displays impressive depth thanks to the 45-degree angle, and the lead-in lines as Giorno walks through the train station likewise convey similar dimensionality. Alongside this, you have stacks upon stacks of canted or distorted angles to really push that stylistic edge Jojo is so known for. There's instances of wacky transitions, like Koichi launching his attack at Giorno, which layers him over the previous frame. There's the same old patterned and or textured close-ups that define the most intense moments. These are all staples of Jojo's most competent episodes, and it's great to see them return. On the flip side, if you're someone like me who thought Part 4's adaptation was a real standout effort in comparison to its prior parts, then you'll probably have noticed, in spite of this episode featuring some truly remarkable work, the otherworldly flair and the bold use of wacky colours are very clearly missing, and that results in an experience that feels a little too normal and a stylistic downgrade. With Part 4, Toshiyuki Kato dropped us into a world with yellow skies and purple hues. There were textures all over, and dramatic moments would drastically alter the world's already bold colour palette for something even more otherworldly. As tensions increased further, that palette would continue to shift before culminating in a total takeover of varying hues. This dominated the entire series regardless of director. Kato's vision was just that strong. With Part 5's debut, there are only a few instances that distinct flavour comes into play, and they're remarkably short-lived. While Suda's extensive experience on this series lets us know that he typically takes a back seat and lets the more creatively inclined directors take the reins, we do once again have to come back to the fact that we have lost a lot of said creative people to that Captain Tsubasa anime, and if the series director's creative voices aren't setting a good example from the get-go, that doesn't bode well for when potentially weaker staff begin to take over. There is one thing that this episode has that absolutely blows away its previous parts though, and that is movement. Like I said, Jojo is not a show that gets by on intense motion, yet this episode is packed with a number of very competent scenes. They primarily come in the form of rotations or reactions, and they go a long way in emphasizing the narrative component they're a part of. This is especially nice to see, as Kishida's character designs are absurdly complex and detailed, and not at all catered to animation. In fact, one of my favourite scenes in the episode may well be uncredited work by the man himself, containing the seriously impressive loose line work he's so well known for. For me, lots of nice motion like this is about enough to make up for the aforementioned shortcomings. If the show is capable of driving home big moments through motion over stylistic quirks, then that's great. It'd be nice to have both, of course, but it's not a total deal breaker. Unfortunately, this is episode 1, and it's episode 1 of 39. Strong character art and animation in its debut does not speak for the rest of the series, and I'm sure many of you can think of several series that began to melt very quickly a few episodes in. This is where my big concern comes in. If Part 4 under Nishii's wonderfully animation-friendly designs struggle to keep up with the production demands across 39 episodes, I really don't know how viable attempting that same thing again is with even more complex designs. This loops me back around to my number one concern. If this motion goes away, if these complex character designs begin to be drawn roughly, then what are we left with? We're left with a series with only okay direction and none of that distinct flair that would make up for these other shortcomings. Yes, the voice acting and music are great and the source material is so much fun, but that doesn't make for a standout anime adaptation. This all sounds very doom and gloom, and it might sound really silly considering I thoroughly enjoyed that first episode, but I'm also keenly aware that this series is a compromise, and I think these things are worth keeping in mind going forwards. I'm not planning on breaking these episodes down one by one, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about my concerns with this first episode out, and then come back way later down the line and see whether this was unnecessary worrying or just reading the writing on the wall. I love Jojo, and I have no doubt in my mind that this will be an enjoyable series regardless, but will it come close to its predecessor? Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was at least a little bit insightful, and I hope you can see where I'm coming from rather than this reading like some unfounded crazy hate video. I'm fully prepared to eat my words at the end of this series, but I think as it stands, this type of thing is really important to talk about. Either way, do be sure to leave a comment down below and give me your impressions of this first episode, your expectations for the series, and whether you think my worries are at all valid. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and as always, I will see you next time.